Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm really excited. I'm really excited to have some amazing ambassadors with us today. We have Alan Warner from Barbados joining us. He was a One Young World ambassador in 2013 in Johannesburg. We have Asiya Mohammed joining us from Trinidad and Tobago. She's an ambassador from the Johannesburg Summit. And we have Javier Jimenez. He's a new candidate, and that's what I'm really excited about. He's a new candidate. He's going to be joining us in Dublin this year, and he's from Costa Rica. We have Raida Mena. She's the regional ambassador for South America. Wave, Raida. She's joining us from Colombia, and then we have Rija Ali. She's a One Young World ambassador. She joined us in 2012 at the Pittsburgh Summit. The reason I'm so happy for this Google Hangout is because Latin America and the Caribbean, our delegation is growing bit by bit, and I know a lot of you have been asking so many questions as far as One Young World is concerned. How can we get involved? How does one do this? How do we fund that? We'll just get right into it. And so now I'm just going to turn this over to Raida, who will then start the questions.
Thank you, Ash, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. What we're going to do in this next hour is we're going to do two things. The first bit of our conversation is going to be responding questions about how to become an ambassador and how to go to One Young World Summit. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about our region, about Latin America and the Caribbean, and how going to the summit is important for us to get to know more about our region, but also to spread what is the issues that our countries are facing. So we're going to start with a question from a candidate from Costa Rica, Pura Vida, Javier Jimenez. I know you have a question, Javier.
Hey.
Hey, how are you? Go ahead.
Yes. How is everyone? How are you? Wave, say hi. Yes, for the past year, I've tried recommending One Young World to some of my friends, but they seem intimidated by how some of the older candidates, they are very accomplished business people and activists. So my question would be, what sort of experiences or accomplishments are you looking for in candidates?
All right, I'm gonna start by answering that and then turn it over to any of our colleagues here. What I would say with being a candidate for One Young World and with being an ambassador is that you can have a lot of experience and participate in the summit, but you can also be at the beginning of being curious about what you're going to do with your either career or your personal life. And the summit serves as an inspiration for people who are very curious about how to serve our society better. So I would say that we are looking for people with a lot of curiosity, that One Young World is looking for people that wants to do a positive impact in their societies, no matter what kind of, how big your accomplishments are at this point in your life when you participate. I don't know if any of our participants here want to say any other thing to Javier about this. Go ahead, Ashley.
So I think that's such a good question because when I started One Young World, I was a 16-year-old, and literally at the beginning of everything that could possibly relate to service, entrepreneurship, anything. And the one thing that I can say to you and your friends is don't feel overwhelmed by that. One Young World thrives off of the diverse diverse environment that they provide. And if everyone was the president of the World Bank, then no one would be able to seek inspiration from anyone. It's important that if you think that maybe you haven't done enough, or maybe you just don't know what you can provide like as a service to the world, to your generation, to your country, One Young World would be the ideal place to start. It's where you seek that inspiration, like Rida said. It's where you realize the full potential that you as a person has.
Okay, thanks, Ash. Anybody else wants to say anything about this question?
Okay, I would like to add because people have been wondering if there's something as over or underqualified person to be applying to One Young World. For me, I don't think that's something, anybody can apply. Doesn't matter how much experience you have or you don't have, because you get to learn so much, or you can also teach people what you know. So I don't think that's a category that we concentrate on if you're overqualified or underqualified. Thank you.
Thanks, Paige. I think Alan, do you have something to say about this?
Yes. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say, I mean, echoing a bit on Ashley's last comment, when you look at the list of delegates that apply to One Young World, there's a range of skill. And I think the great thing about One Young World is that it's a huge mentorship opportunity, I believe, and that's at least how I saw it. If you had brilliant ideas, you just wanted to be able to understand how to implement them, there were lots of candidates there who had gone out and done it within their respective communities. So it's a really good opportunity to get yourself going.
Yes, thank you, Alan. And I think Javier, also one something that is very nice about One Young World is that you very much feel the global vibe of the event. When you're there, you are a representative of your country, but you also become a part of a group that is just wanting to know and wanting to share the things that they're doing to positively impact our world. So with that, I would like to ask you if you have any other questions.
I have more questions, more about the topics that we'll be discussing at One Young World. I don't know if it's part of this section of the video chat.
Yes, sure.
Okay, yes, I know that there are many topics like business and activism and many other things that we'll be discussing in One Young World. I want to know if there's a particular theme, a theme that will be like centered to the conference.
Good. I think Ashley, you wanted to say something about that?
Yes, I can talk about that. So as far as the general theme of the conference is concerned, no one knows until maybe 2 or 3 months before it happens, because ambassadors create the content of the summit. Right now we're going through what we call the global consultation process, where One Young World sends off various surveys for the ambassadors to fill out. What would you like to talk about during this year's summit? What should be more prevalent during this year's summit? Do you think that we should dial it back on education? Do you think that we should boost up environment just a bit more? Those are the questions that ambassadors are asked. And due to the answers that One Young World receives, that's how they know the content to create for that year's summit. So is there a specific theme? No. But is there more or less content based on what ambassadors provide? Yeah. That's how One Young World decides what content is going to be added to the summit.
I think Asia, you wanted to add something to that?
Yes, I would just add that whatever topic you're interested in, the chance is very likely that One Young World is going to discuss it through the consultation process. So, for example, last year in Johannesburg, every topic from youth unemployment to HIV/AIDS to climate change, there was such a wide range. So the cool thing about the One Young World Summit is that you get to really get more in-depth analysis of whatever topics you're interested in, and then you also get to learn about topics that you may know very little about. So it's a win-win situation.
Definitely, and something I would like to add to that is not only the topics, but the way the summit works. You got plenary sessions. We got workshops during the event. So you got different types of activities in all of the subjects that are going to be addressed that help you get definitely a very, very wide perspective of what's happening in each of those subjects. So yeah, I think with that we're going to continue, and I think we have a question for our Twitter. Remember, you can use the hashtag OneYoungWorld2014, and the question we have is, being a candidate from Trinidad and Tobago, what are some of the activities you are expected to participate in at the summit? Asiya, would you like to answer that?
Definitely. I'm very happy to have that question from Anwar back. She's one of our candidates. The summit has so many different activities. Plenary sessions is really like, it's, you know, there's such a great opportunity to learn, I think, from some of the most amazing global leaders, people like Richard Branson, people like Arianna Huffington, people like Kofi Annan. What I particularly enjoyed in the summit last year were the breakout sessions, where you can choose a particular event that you want to go to, or a place that you want to go to, and you get to learn from and meet with a lot of local people. So I participated in a breakout session to Soweto, where we visited social entrepreneurs who worked in the area of jewelry, and through jewelry and their business, they were bringing more and more young people in Soweto out of poverty, and it was an amazing experience. Also, delegates are able to organize what I call night owl sessions over areas that they feel very interested in, if it's women's affairs, if it's conflict, etc. And so these are some of the activities that go on, and of course you have amazing networking opportunities as well.
Yeah, Garcia, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead with another question that Ashley and I get very often, being the coordinator ambassador from our regions. And one of those questions is, how do we get to the One Young World Summit? I would say that first, and it's very important that you know that you already can apply to be a candidate. This you have to do right now. This you can go to the website and do this process and already become a candidate for the summit. Now, how to get there? There are tons of different options, and we're going to discuss a couple of them. The first one that we're going to talk about, and that we get asked a lot, is all bar none. And we have a couple of people here that were beneficiaries from all bar none. So I think Rija and then Alan had something to say about it. So Rija?
Yeah, I was in 2012 sponsored by All Bar None to go to One Young World as an ambassador, as a candidate of Panama. Everything was paid for, from flights to food, accommodation, almost everything. I think this year they're not including flights though. But the year I went, everything was included. It was you apply through their program. Once you're a candidate, they ask you certain questions for the All Bar None program, and once you're in it, you get emails from them if you've been shortlisted, and then they ask you for certain documents and everything to see if you can win the place in All Bar None. However, just because you don't get to win All Bar None, it doesn't mean that you don't get to participate. You can also look for other sponsors, which has also been a question that has been asked a lot.
Before we go to that, I want to quickly give the word to Ashley so that she can explain to us what exactly is All Bar None.
So All Bar None was implemented because One Young World realized that there was an influx of certain ambassadors from various countries, but then in other countries there were literally no delegates, no representation, nothing. So All Bar None was a scholarship that was put in place to provide underrepresented countries with the opportunity to be represented at the summit. All Bar None is inclusive of registration and airline and your air ticket. Basically, when you apply for All Bar None, that's using You know, I'm from an underrepresented country. I really show passion and I want to go to the summit. So that's essentially what All Bar None is, a scholarship for underrepresented countries.
Right. Good. Thank you very much, Ash. I think Alan wanted to add something to this discussion we were having.
I mean, it's along the lines as well of All Bar None as well, but you know, for me, after I applied to the summit last year, very excited to go, and obviously the issue of funding and how to get there was a challenge, but like I said, like it was said earlier, it was very well organized. Anyone who was, or not anyone, but a lot of people who were from underrepresented countries were given the opportunity to go there and really be able to network. Some All Bar None scholarship winners were actually on stage discussing their work, you know, at the plenary session. So, you know, having someone who was able to get there and show what the Caribbean is doing on a much broader scale was really, really good. And I don't think the All Bar None scholarship would have allowed some people not to get there. It was a really good experience. Like I said, everything was covered. Got to go into the community through the plenary sessions, which I thought was a really good aspect of the conference, because oftentimes when you have the breakout sessions, you're still, you know, very much in a conference center, but I went straight into the community in Soweto, and I saw how things were being implemented on the ground. So it was a really good experience.
Thank you, Alan. That's true. And as we were saying, All Bar None is just one of the many options to fund your way to get to a One Young World Summit. And Asiya has another different example of how she got to the summit last year.
Yes, so not all countries are on the All Bar None list, and Trinidad and Tobago is not on that list. But, you know, I applied, and what happened is One Young World has a database of the profiles of all the candidates. So it's very simple. Your description of yourself, all the activities you've done in your community, they're all up on there. And so what happened in my case, a corporate sponsor was browsing through, realized the Caribbean was underrepresented, and asked One Young World to prepare a list, a short list of candidates from which they would choose one person and sponsor that person fully. And so I was really fortunate because I received full sponsorship from a corporate sponsor based in London. They had never met me before. They just saw my profile on the One Young World database, and they said, she needs to be in Johannesburg, you know, and they fully sponsored everything. So flights, accommodation, summit costs. So just for all the candidates out there, I know you all want to know about funding, and you know, make sure your profiles represent you fully. Make sure they're amazing profiles, because every day corporate sponsors are going through and saying, who can we sponsor for Dublin this year?
Good, thank you very much. Ashley, you wanted to say something?
No, I just piggybacking off of what Asiya said. It's so important for you to have a strong profile. Sometimes people are just like, my name is Ash, I'm from the Bahamas, I like long walks on the beach. Having a really strong profile really allows you to get every possible avenue of funding out there. Every year I fundraise in the most untraditional ways, but I always make sure that I keep my profile updated, because I never know who's browsing through the website. I never know who's going to decide, oh, I like what she has to say, I want to bring her to Dublin and have a conversation with her. So it's really important to make sure that you have a strong profile.
True. And the other thing is that, I mean, there are many ways that as candidates we can explore to get to One Young World. I mean, we know many of our past candidates have done crowdfunding campaigns or approach local companies with what One Young World is and explain it to them. And then some of them, for example, when they come back to their countries, they have some sort of workshop with employees and with like members of the staff of the company so that they can share what they learn in One Young World. So there are many different ways to participate in a summit, but definitely the most important part is to have a good profile, to be out there, to be searching for ways, and to ask either staff of One Young World or us as regional ambassadors to help you if you have any questions or if you need any materials like a letter or something like that. That might help you get the funds to get to the summit. I know Javier had another question, so Javier.
Yes, I wanted to know. I know that every year after One Young World, does One Young World keep track or some kind of measurement or control over the impact that the ambassadors have had on the regions they represent? Like maybe if they discuss something on the summit and they agree on taking action or on certain kind of issue, do the One Young World organization keep any sort of study of the impact that they've had?
This is a good question, Javier. Thank you very much. And I think Ash and I can talk a little bit about it because as coordinating ambassadors, one of our tasks is to get ambassadors to pull a survey that we're doing on the impact that One Young World has had in their careers or in their projects or initiatives. And so One Young World wants to keep track of what ambassadors are doing so that they can know how attending the summit has helped them to either grow or showcase what their experiences and their projects are how are they're growing or they're changing or so yes, One Young World does keep track, but this is something that we need to help them. We need to help them keep track because if we don't give them that information, if we don't share what we're doing, it's impossible for the team to know what is it that we are doing as ambassadors. Anybody wants to add a little bit about it? Yeah, Ash.
So you asked, and basically how One Young World keeps track of what the ambassadors do after the summit is through impact measurement forms / surveys. Within the impact measurement forms, we say, what have you done since the summit? Because, co-founder David Jones, at the end of each summit, he says, even if you go back home and do one thing, it could be turning your light off before you leave the house to go for work. It could be eating a salad once a week. But even if you do one thing, what is it that you do? And so within these impact measurement forms, ambassadors can say what projects they've been leading. And this is how One Young World can keep a great database of what it is that its ambassadors are doing so they can scale their impact.
Definitely. Sia, you wanted to say something about it?
Yes, thank you, Raida. Also, just to add, Javier, as a One Young World ambassador, once you return to your country, if it is you're doing an event, you usually need to inform One Young World in London, as well as your regional coordinating ambassador, before you do the event. And then post the event, you get back in touch with them again, and you say, well, I ran the event, it was successful, these are the major outcomes. So that's another great way as well to assess what ambassadors are doing once they return to their home countries.
Thank you, Sia. And I think we have a couple of minutes left to this first part of the call. And Alan, you wanted to add?
Yes, thanks, Rita. I'll just make a quick point. To the same effect where One Young World wants to be able to measure impact. I know of several candidates, and I'm working on it myself, that have started blogs after their One Young World event and experience. And through that way, One Young World is kind of getting the feed on a much larger scale through people's own blogs and seeing what they're doing. So similar to what you're saying, is where you contact One Young World, but having like a long documented list of what's happening through people's own blogs as well too has been pretty good for them to keep track.
Definitely. And I think that if we're successful in filling the surveys and the impact measurement forms, One Young World can also help us keep track of other ambassadors that are doing similar things, and we can connect or reconnect with them. I want to, a very good example of knowing where people are and what are they doing is what happened with Venezuela a couple of months ago. As we all know, in Latin America and the Caribbean, Venezuela is not facing a very good moment right now. And we were able to connect 3 ambassadors. 2 of them are living in the United States. 1 of them is living in Venezuela. And the 3 of them wrote a blog about the situation in Venezuela. So explaining to ambassadors what is happening in the country. And that was really good because it was a collaborative effort, but also because people from our region, from Latin America and the Caribbean, and from other parts of the world that are ambassadors, helped join the campaign on social media. And it was a very good example of what can be done if we really keep track of the type of activities or the work or initiatives that One Young World ambassadors are doing all over the world. So, yeah. We have a couple of minutes to finish this part. I wanted to ask Javier if he has another question, or check if we have any other question on our Twitter or our Facebook. I think what we can do in this last minutes is talk a little bit about the kind of learning that ambassadors get when they go to One Young World. And that is a good way for us to connect with the next part that Asia is going to be helping us moderate. And it's a little bit more about our region, Latin America and the Caribbean, and what are the issues that we're facing in our region, and how being One Young World ambassador has helped us either face those issues or create initiatives to work around them, or to connect our initiatives with new things that we learned from the summit. So as I always like to point out, we talk about different regions in the world, and we talk about poorest regions, but we don't often mention that Latin America and the Caribbean is the most unequal region in the entire world. And that when we go to One Young World, this is a very good place and a good opportunity to showcase all of the great activities that we're doing in our countries. So with that, I want to pass it over to Astilia. He's going to be moderating the second part of our call.
Okay, thank you very much, Raida, for what you're doing. Excellent session with respect to questions from different candidates. And I think Javier sort of asked it best, you know, how does One Young World follow up, and what do One Young World ambassadors really do? So you attend this amazing summit, you get to learn directly from global counselors Kofi Annan, Richard Branson, Ariana Huffington, then what? You know, you go back to your countries, and what exactly happens? So we're very fortunate to have with us a few amazing ambassadors from Latin America and the Caribbean. So I hope that you will learn from their experiences. So I'm going to begin with Ash, and I'll ask you just two simple questions. What are the greatest challenges facing young people in the Bahamas, and how do you feel your experience from the One Young World Summit helped you when you arrived back in the Bahamas to create positive change?
I think as a young person from the Bahamas, I think one of the main issues that's definitely prevalent is the fact that youth engagement, that's one, and then youth empowerment, that's two. I think now in the Bahamas, you know, there are a selective group of young Bahamians that are now starting to wake up and, you know, rise against what they feel is like our social injustices, whether it be you know, either in politics or in the private sector. They're now starting to wake up. But we come from a generation that has always been told to sit small, don't offend anyone, don't walk on any toes, walk on eggshells. You're going to be blacklisted if you do this. You're going to be victimized if you do that. And so right now in the Bahamas, I honestly think it's a problem of youth empowerment and youth engagement. Because I can talk about education and human rights and a lack of entrepreneurship. But the fact of the matter remains that if youth aren't engaged, if youth aren't empowered to touch on those topics, then what's the point in even raising them?
Excellent. Well, thank you, Ash. And can you just go into a little bit more depth about how attending the One Young World Summit helped you to go back to the Bahamas and become more empowered? What changes have you made within your community?
Oh, I love that question. So, like I said, I was a 16-year-old going on 17 when I went to the summit. And I sat in on a really interesting topic, global dignity. Um, um, Prince Haakon of Norway was there. That was in 2011 in Zurich. And he talked about dignity, and I was like, what does this even mean? What is it? And he has an organization called Global Dignity. And as a kid, yeah, I was a kid. I was bullied in high school. High school was current for me, and to be able to sit in this session where where people talked about everyone deserving the right to lead a dignified life, that alone inspired me. That alone empowered me. So as soon as I left, I said, whoa, I have to get into schools. I have to talk about global dignity. Bullying is something that Bahamians think is just, it's a kid thing. Oh, the kids will be kids. And so as soon as I came back, I was able to do a tour of 10 schools between Grand Bahama and Nassau, New Providence. And that's one way in which I was able to get involved through One Young World. Because before that, I didn't understand my potential. I didn't realize what it was that I was capable of until that very moment.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ash, for sharing a very inspiring story with the other ambassadors and with candidates and our viewers. I'm going to turn now to Rija, who is from Panama. Panama just received quite a lot of attention from the international community with the World Economic Forum. And so, Rija, I want to ask you, what is the greatest challenge to young people in Panama, and what was your takeaway from the One Young World Summit in Pittsburgh in 2012? What impact have you been able to make when you returned to Panama?
Well, starting off, I agree with the Ashley in youth empowerment. If the youth doesn't want to get involved themselves, it's a big issue. And I think that leads to education, because the system that you're putting, the mindset the children are growing up with, should come from schools, what they're teaching, and they should always be motivated. So I think lack of motivation in the country is one of the biggest issues that leads to other either it be poverty, other sectors. And I think it's very important to start developing an education system that starts motivating children from early age, so that they have that mindset to be able to, when they grow up, they are motivated to go ahead and be involved in politics in other sectors. And going to One Young World, it opens up my eyes, because you meet all these people that are actually doing something, and that started from zero, and it tells us that everybody has a voice and everybody has something to give. And when I got back, it's not that, okay, the conference happened and then you come back, and after a few months, the motivation level starts to go down. But the people you meet, they're always, you can always connect to them. I think I've been talking 2 years. When I went in 2012, I've been in touch with every one of them, and we've always been in contact and helping each other develop ideas to combat situations. And you might not know everything, but there are other people implementing different ideas in different countries, and they're always willing to help you. It's not about a competition, but working together. That's what I love about One Young World too.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rija, for sharing that. And I think for me personally, that was one of the most amazing things of One Young World. You get to meet other ambassadors, other candidates, other delegates, and learn practices. So what are they doing in their country in terms of education, and is it working? How effective has it been? So in terms of that, can I ask you, Rija, have you been able to collaborate with any of the ambassadors on a specific project for education, for example?
Definitely. I was talking to an ambassador from Nicaragua, and he's implementing an education system. He's working on it, and he's going through some tests. And he's been asking me. I was going to visit Nicaragua, and we were gonna probably meet up this year and see what we can do. And that same system I can bring back to Panama, and he could help me implement it in Panama. So it's like I said, it goes hand in hand with other ambassadors and other countries.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Richa, because that is definitely one of the most amazing assets of One Young World, that you can work together and collaboratively with other ambassadors. Ryder, did you want to add something? Ryder, did you want to add something?
Sorry, I was talking and yeah, okay. No, I was just saying that it is a little bit about my personal experience with One Young World, because I was involved with One Young World without being an ambassador or a candidate yet. I was able to participate in something called the Wake Up Call, which was an event that happened in February of 2012 all over the world. And we were in different countries raising awareness for different issues. For example, in Colombia, we were raising awareness for education. And so for me, being part of One Young World was kind of getting connected to all of the people that I was already connected with, but also participating in the experience of the summit. So there are ways, I mean, if the participation in the summit doesn't happen this year, there are many ways where you can start getting connected with One Young World, and that ways can then that can help you to go to the summit. So for me, it started with the Wake Up Call, which is one of the many examples of what can One Young World bring to our lives.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Ryder. And so now we will move on to Barbados. We have with us Ambassador Alan Warner, and Barbados is home to the Barbados Platform of Action, which deals with climate change and sustainable development. So, Alan, your questions are the same as the others before. What is the greatest challenge to young people in Barbados, and what was your take back from the One Young World Summit?
Well, to summarize is tricky, but I'll do my best. I mean, I think starting off, firstly, there are a few challenges that are facing young people right now in Barbados. I think one of the first ones, youth unemployment is significantly high, and that's certainly a problem, with the working force and people's own career development. The second one is in education. There's been some recent changes in education policies, so there's a much lower application rate for university these days because the rates or the fees for tuition have gone up. But what I would like to really say here, in terms of things that are challenging and for youth, especially right now, is that I really look at the area of climate change, in particular, being a small island like Barbados, and as you mentioned, Asia, that's where the Barbados Plan of Action was developed as it relates to climate change. And a small island in terms of being vulnerable to climate shocks, we already have a very high importation food bill, sustainable development agriculturally and otherwise is going to be a challenge as climate change slowly comes upon us or rapidly comes upon us. And I remember sitting in a lot of the plenary sessions, especially when Sir Bob Geldof was talking. He's a very strong advocate as it comes to climate change and doing everything possible to avoid it. And what I took away from that is that Barbados and other small island countries, actually, we may not see them potentially at future One Young World conferences because of these increased climate shocks and so on and so forth. So what can we do to help mitigate any future damages or challenges? And what I ended up doing when I left, and I hope to be able to implement it once I get back in the summer, is that I started a book chapter on early warning systems for climate change. Specifically focusing on vulnerable populations. Barbados is one of those, and other small island developing states. And it's co-authored with a couple colleagues of mine. It's going to be released in a couple months, part of a UN publication. So I'm hoping that once I reach back to Barbados, I can, it's more on the policy development level, begin to talk with people at the university, people in the governments, to see what we can do in terms of having early warning systems for climate change, so that Barbados can continue to be the best it can be and still.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that, Alan. It seems like you are definitely engaged in doing amazing amazing work in Barbados. So now we'll switch to Javier. Javier, you're a candidate for the 2014 summit in Dublin, and I want to ask you a very simple question. Tell us why you're excited. What do you want to learn from One Young World? Tell us what you hope to experience when you get to Dublin.
Hey, that's a great question. What I want to experience when I go there is being surrounded by young people like me who are interested in mainly business and social causes. I like to consider myself an entrepreneur since I'm starting my own business soon. So I want to know from people around the world how they have started their own businesses and how they have used it to change unemployment and to better themselves and their community. So that's what I want to know. I want to be surrounded by young minds, by brilliant people, and also the sponsors and the coaches. And I would really want to meet Arianna Huffington since she's a great inspiration. I don't know if she's gonna be there this year, but I wanna absorb everything I can from meeting with great people and hopefully take it here to my country and to better myself and the people.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Javier. Raida, you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add how amazing the connections with people that you maintain when you go to a summit like One Young World are. Like, you're definitely connected with people from literally all over the world, and people who, even if they're doing very different things from the kind of things that you're doing, they all have a similar vibe to life, a similar passion for the kind of things that they're doing. So I would like to mark that when it comes to One Young World and how special it is, because yes, you have the opportunity to share with amazing leaders from the world who are there addressing us, where they're talking to us. But most importantly, you have the opportunity to share with people who can either become your colleagues or your friends, or a house where you can stay whenever you travel all around the world. So definitely I would say that networking is one of the most important things when you go to One Young World. And definitely what you bring back to your country or to your countries, because for example, in Regis and my case, Regis from Pakistan, but she lives in Panama. I am Lebanese living in Colombia. So we have this global vibe to us that we also take with us to these kinds of events. So definitely this is one of the things that I would like to point out in this conversation is what One Young World brings to you as a person, not only to your career, not only to your projects, but as a person. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things of the summit.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Raida, for adding that, because I feel like so many of us say One Young World has changed our lives, and people ask why, and I think it's that personal aspect to it, that personal transformation that happens that, sometimes you try to explain this and you say, well, no, you really need to go to Dublin experience it. All right, so Ashley, thank you for that.
No, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. Like, seriously, right out of my mouth. Shalisha Samuel, she's one of our Caribbean ambassadors. She wrote a blog a few months ago in reference to One Young World. She said it's the first time that she felt globally connected, and that's so true. Rija and I met once in Pittsburgh, briefly in Pittsburgh, but I just came back from the World Economic Forum on Latin America in Panama, and Risha literally opened her arms wide, her arms in her home very wide, and she said, "Come on, let's go." And when you see something like that, and that's just a small example, I can go anywhere in the world now and know that I have a connection to at least one person that's there. And that's a connection like that is something that money definitely cannot buy. It's one of those things that you definitely have to, experience at least once in your life, because there are so many conferences out there, but there are few conferences that promise that, like Asia said, that personal aspect of it all.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ash, for sharing. So for all the candidates who are viewing this Google Hangout right now, remember those words, personal transformation, and keep those crowdfunding platforms going. Make sure you get to Dublin. You are there to build yourself personally and also your global network. Javier, there's something you wanted to add for the candidates?
Yes, something that I'm really excited about One Young World is that from what I've read, even if we're discussing world issues and world problems, there's like an approach to turn even something negative into something positive. So if we're talking about unemployment, the whole idea is to turn that into a way to express ourselves and to make it into something better, in finding ideas for jobs, for creation, and whatever the topic is. I think that One Young World tries to turn it into something positive and empower people to change. But instead of focusing on the negative, we make it better by being surrounded with all this network.
Yes, I mean that is definitely true. One Young World is all about finding solutions to some of the globe's most challenging problems. And one of the candidates at the plenary in Johannesburg, she was quoting Nelson Mandela, and she said, you see life through the eye of the imagination. You don't see what is, but you see what can be. And I think for all of us, that really was the One Young World experience. Alan, you had something to add?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you touched on this a little bit at the beginning before you started, but I know you've been moderating the second half quite beautifully, but I don't know if you've had a chance to give us your own experience as a candidate from Trinidad, what you did from One Young World. If you want to share that with us as well too, and other viewers.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Alan. So yes, I mean, One Young World has changed my life. I'll say it again. Once I came back to Trinidad and Tobago, I decided that I was going to take a completely different trajectory. I was so inspired by Professor Mohamed Yunus and Sir Richard Branson, and I remember, Branson speaking to us about starting his very first business with 5,000 US, and just saying, if it failed, it's okay. And that's when I realized, sometimes you do have to take that jump off the cliff. So for me, my personal journey, I've always really been interested in empowering women who are survivors of violence. And post One Young World, I'm happy to report back and say, I sort of left my daytime job in diplomacy and foreign policy, and I opened my own company, Conflict Women Limited, and so I work full-time now, financially empowering survivors of violence, and the experience has been amazing. So many One Young World ambassadors from all around the world have come in to support me, in little things and management and offering advice, and it just has been amazing. And I felt like if I wasn't in Johannesburg, if I didn't hear Richard Branson say, it's okay to fail, when you fail, you learn, I may not have taken that jump. And today, I mean, I can look myself in the mirror and I can say, I am truly living the life I want to live. I am living the dream, and that is very much thanks to One Young World. So, each of you, all the candidates, I hope you have exactly, your own experience to make you the best you that you can be. So thanks for that, Alan. And now I will move on to Raida to tell us about Colombia and challenges faced by young people in Colombia and how One Young World has impacted your life, Raida.
Thank you, Asia. I think that as many other countries in Latin America, and very related to what Ashley was saying, is we do face a lot of lack of empowerment to youth in our country. And I think, and it's something that we've been talking a lot about with my colleagues and with friends, is that we are not taught to fail. And so when we get out of either universities or when we are starting to look for ways to maintain ourselves, to provide for our families, those who have to maintain their families, we're not taught that sometimes things are not going to go well. And then Colombia faces a lot of very common issues for our region, particularly poverty. And the way to actually leverage poverty is to teach youth that whatever they decide to do, they have to do it because it is connected to their passion. And that is a little bit of what I'm trying to do in my country and also globally with an initiative called Global Youth Volunteers. Global Youth Volunteers is a strategy of the International Association for Volunteer Effort that seeks to teach youth that when you volunteer, you pursue your passions, you build your skills, and you multiply your positive impact. So for me, One Young World was just was served to get more inspiration, to get to know what other people are doing, but also to understand how to best spread this message globally with other youth that are searching to understand how can they impact their communities.
Thank you so much, Raida, for sharing. And we have some questions being tweeted. So I'll go to a question from Jason Williams in Barbados. He asks, how do we promote non-traditional careers that are helping other countries, like biomedical engineering, artificial intelligence engineering, epidemiology, etc.? So anyone wants to answer, the floor is open.
I think I can take a start at that. It's a good question, and knowing sometimes entrepreneurship can be a little slow on the pickup sometimes, but I think probably one of the first things that's important is to really do a needs assessment. So are you for example in the medical community going out and seeing, well, what do doctors need? As it relates to biomedical engineering, do we need specific devices? Are there things that could help specifically as it relates to diabetes, because that's a pretty prevalent disease in Barbados? So I think the first thing is to really do a needs assessment and to see, of what technology that already exists out there, what parts of it can we kind of pull into our own, for our own needs and desires, and then from there further branch out. So kind of see the needs assessment, try to implement it on a small scale. Once it gets a bit of traction, then hopefully this type of field can slowly start to grow. So I think that's probably one of the first things to do. If anyone else wants to add.
Okay, thank you. I have Raida, and Raida would like to add something.
It's just something that that goes along with listening to what communities need. Whatever field that we are trying to work around, I think the most important thing right now is to listen to what the necessities out there are, because sometimes the solutions can be either technological options or it can be things that we are already working in, but we don't know how to frame where. So I would say that that in any case, when we talk about traditional or non-traditional careers, as youth, we need to start listening to our communities, and we need to start connecting with our context to actually provide solutions or provide options that might be of impact for everybody.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Raida. We have a question coming in from Rolando in Panama. He says, one of the problems in Panama is corruption and politics. How do we work together to combat that? The floor is open if anyone would like to go. Ash, yeah?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I think I touched on this a little bit, but corruption is something that that plagues every region, not just ours. I think it's up to citizens to definitely make politicians more accountable, and doing that by implementing a system of transparency. Um, I think as long as we allow politicians to continue with corrupt behavior, I mean, the mere fact that you can ask a question like that goes to show that people know about it. And so it's about what citizens allow and how long they allow it to happen, if I'm making any sense.
Yes, thank you so much, Ash. That's true. You know, personal responsibility and community responsibility is very important in topics like in dealing with and addressing corruption. I think Rija would like to add something specific to the Panama experience.
Yes, regarding to what Ash said, it's very important for citizens to take conscience and be conscious in what their decisions. Because, for example, passing a red light, and you can always pay the cop to get by because paying them $10, $20, that will be corruption from your side as well as from the cop. So it's up to us if to follow the rules and not fall into corruption. And once we start raising our voice against it, I don't think any government can do anything about it if we know our voice and the power we can have in the country.
All right, I think we just lost Sia.
Rija, for sharing your experience.
Yeah, I think Asia is.
Thank you, Rija, for sharing your experience with us.
Yeah, I think Asia is having some connectivity
Okay, thank you, Rija, for
issues.
sharing.
Good, Asia, go ahead.
I'm here now. Can you hear me? Yes, can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Rija, for sharing. I think that's so true in terms of what you were saying, because the world, the global environment we live in today, it's changing so much. So the state-centric approach on which international relations was based for the past 20 or 30 years, maybe it's changing. So we're seeing more and more actors today coming forward. So civil society is now playing a huge role. The corporate sector, as individuals, we have so much more to say. So I think all of those go hand in hand. On that note, we have a few more questions coming in, and I realize it's 12 p.m. here, but we'll take 2 more questions before we close off. One of the questions is coming in. It's a tweet, so hashtag OYW2014. What are the topics being proposed for this year's Dublin Summit?
I can take that. That's a good question. So as we were saying, the survey to define the plenary sessions and the subjects of this year's summit is out right now. The plenary sessions are the summit's main session. And for example, last year we touched base on subjects like education, human rights, leadership, global business. And so the idea is that we define the topics of the summit of this year through this survey that is out there right now. So normally it goes around these kinds of subjects that I was just saying. But the most important thing is that we do vote and we do decide, because the plenary sessions are meetings where all delegates and all ambassadors are together discussing global issues. So it's very important that we all participate.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Rija. And we have one last question from fellow Trinidad and Tobago One Young World Ambassador, Warren Chanansing. He asks, what are the types of people you meet at One Young World, and how do they work with the counselors? A very, very important question. The floor is open to anyone who would like to go.
Okay, so basically, there's a diverse. I think I said this before. There are diverse background of people that come to One Young World, and if I understand the question correctly, I'll just give an example of Ariana Huffington. Last year, she attended the summit, and she spoke with us on the third metric, but she also allowed us to use the Huffington Post as a platform. So if you're a One Young World ambassador, it doesn't matter what year you attended. If you're a One Young World ambassador and you have something that you'd like to say, Ariana Huffington has graciously allowed the Huffington Post to be that platform for One Young World ambassadors to get their thoughts across. We have various ambassadors that are taking advantage of that. We have Kimron from Grenada, who now lives in Canada. He, every other week he's posting something on entrepreneurship, and I gotta say that boy is going. It's things like that, and I think what I just want to convey with this right now, because I don't know if I'll get the chance to say this later on, but One Young World is what you make it. So you don't go to the summit, sit down, and expect the magic to happen. It's what you make it, and sometimes you don't even realize what has happened, what has transpired until you come back home. Sometimes it takes months for you to realize how magical and how epic it probably was. But the magic doesn't happen when you just, okay, oh, it's time for plenary session on education. Oh, I'll just go sit down and hopefully Muhammad Yunus will implore something amazing into me, and I'll just go home and do nothing. No, it's an active effort. You actively go and you talk to ambassadors. You actively go and try to speak to counselors. You actively try to speak to the One Young World crew and see what can be improved on. How do I get my country to be more involved? How do I get youth from my country to be more involved? So it's a magical experience, but it's also something that you have to work at. It's nothing that comes automatically.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ash, for sharing that wonderful example of working together with counselors for the greater good. I just want to thank all the ambassadors. We've had a lot of questions coming in through Twitter. We've had such great conversations. You shared your personal experiences in the summit. So thank you all for that. And now I will turn back to Ash, our One Young World Regional Coordinating Ambassador for Central America and the Caribbean, who started the session. So Ash, you're on.
Thank you. I realize how important dialogue like this is, and because of that, this is just the first of many Google Hangouts that we'll be having leading up to the summit. It's important that Latin Americans and Caribbean islanders feel connected, because I think sometimes we feel because either our countries are either too big or we're separated by islands, we don't feel as connected as we should. Dialogues like this really allow for us to meet meet face to face almost, and talk about some of the things that are either bothering us, or some of the things that we need assistance in conveying within our own countries. So with that being said, this is just the first of many Google Hangouts that will be taking place. I'd like to thank everyone that took their time to watch the Hangout this morning, and I'd also like to thank you guys for coming in and sharing insight on everything. I'd like to like Javier, our newest candidate. Our newest candidate for One Young World. I can't wait to meet him in Dublin. I feel like I know him already. And I'd also just like for us to keep in our heads and our hearts, Venezuela. Let's just send out various prayers to Venezuela. We have ambassadors that are there on the ground, and every day we're thinking of you. And so just keep that in your hearts, and keep it in your prayers, and keep it in your thoughts. And with that being said, have a good Saturday, everybody. And until next time.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.